What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and it recently occurred to me as I was going through and trying to figure out what story I was going to do in celebration of the newest trailer for DrStrange. We never did Damnation, and we kind of have to, right? I mean, we've done a lot of the other stuff, right? We did the initial run by Jason Aaron, and then I don't remember if we did Dennis Hopeless's run, and then we did the Donny Cates run, and then Damnation really comes directly after that, and then we can go into like the death of DrStrange, which is all just this great big huge cohesive story. So here's the thing. This takes place immediately after the events of Secret Empire. So, explanation for people who don't know anything about Secret Empire. If you do, bear with me. If you don't, listen up. So the idea behind Secret Empire is that basically the Red Skull got his hands on a cosmic cube and used it to change the history of Steve Rogers. So instead of him growing up to be a patriot and becoming Captain America, instead he ended up becoming an agent of Hydra, and then eventually seized control of Hydra, and then successfully conquered North America, and then set his sights on like the rest of the world. Ultimately, he was defeated, but during his time as Steve, as we love to call him here in the comic book community, Evil Steve Rogers, he had actually basically destroyed Las Vegas. Literally torched the whole city and killed everybody in it. I mean, I don't know why the destruction of a city and just millions of deaths are funny to me, but you guys get what I'm saying, right? He literally just torched the whole town. And so following that, Las Vegas was kind of like this testament to the fact that like Steve was beyond saving, right? There was no way to basically get him back and bring back Steve Rogers. And so in order to fix that, Marvel basically used some wizardry and then just kind of imagined him out of thin air and then turned like imaginary Steve Rogers into real Steve Rogers, and then Steve was killed during Ta-Nehisi Coates' Captain America run. It's weird. Check out the Secret Empire story itself was amazing. Evil Captain America was the coolest Captain America had been in like 50 years. But make sure you guys go check that out. It'll be down in the description. It's a really, really cool story. Having said that, the way this picks up is basically with DrStrange essentially coming along and then basically fixing New York and resurrecting it. Now for Stephen Strange himself, right? His powers have experienced a huge increase. And the reason why is because for a time during Donny Cates' DrStrange run, Loki had actually stolen the mantle or taken the mantle from Stephen Strange. And so Loki basically became the new Sorcerer Supreme. Now, eventually Loki got his ass absolutely handed to him by the Sentry, which was amazing. Really, it was the Void more than the Sentry. But eventually the Sentry, the Void, whatever, working alongside DrStrange, essentially ousted Loki. And then DrStrange went back to being the Sorcerer Supreme and got a boost in his powers along the way. And so during this time, with this kind of magical boost, this is the way he's able to basically restore Las Vegas to the way that it looked before it was destroyed, and then in turn resurrect everybody who died. Here's the problem with this, right? Las Vegas is not called the Devil's Playground for no reason. When Las Vegas is resurrected and everything returns to normal, suddenly like the ground starts shaking and this just enormous tower just erupts from like underground, right? Just explodes outward in the middle of Las Vegas. And that's when you get like this grand opening, right? The Hotel Inferno, as is kind of given to us by like this guy, right? This guy who just looks kind of crazy. But the thing about this is that as soon as this happens and like DrStrange is given like a VIP card, he immediately knows what's going on, right? He's like, okay, so like obviously this is a whole thing with like Mephisto, right? Like Hotel Inferno, the Devil's Hotel, all that kind of stuff. So he picks up on what's happening pretty fast. The funny thing is that as he gets in there, you have a combination of things happening. You have like regular people who were in there, and then you have like a bunch of demons and stuff running around. But the people who were there don't really seem to know exactly what's going on, right? I mean, they almost seem to be just sort of ignoring it to a degree. And so in the middle of all this, Stephen Strange is met by the arrival of Mephisto. Now, the funny thing about this is that, of course, as soon as Mephisto appears anywhere, right, you immediately know that like something nefarious is going on. The other funny thing here is that Mephisto doesn't look like his normal self. He looks like a rich hotel owner. So it's kind of funny seeing him undertaking this role. But then ultimately he sits Stephen Strange down and just kind of explains to him exactly what had been going on. Now, here's one thing to grasp about Mephisto as we go through this, right? That Mephisto is one of many iterations of what you would call Satan in Marvel Comics. Technically speaking, the idea of like Satan, right? So like the fallen angel from the, Abrahamic religions, right? So, the God of Abraham, all that kind of stuff. That guy doesn't really exist in Marvel Comics. We thought he did in terms of like it being the one below all during Al Ewing's Incredible Hulk run. That's actually not the case, really Immortal Hulk run, but that's really not the case. Instead, like basically the one below all was just what happens when the one above all essentially hulks out, right? It's his version of the Hulk, right? It's just crazy evil version. But the idea is you have all kinds of what are called Hell Lords here, right? You've got Damon Hellstrom, you've got all kinds of people here. Mephisto is simply one of them. Now, the reality is that among the Hell Lords, they're all basically vying for like the most number of human souls they can possibly get. And the reason why is because Marvel has long since, and this is really back during the days of Roy Thomas, Marvel has long since put forward this idea that like the Hell Lords will all go to war against one another officially, and whoever has the most number of human souls will basically win. But that's how all these guys essentially work. The way Mephisto works is that if you make a deal with him, you'll get what you want, but it'll be in like a twisted and really a useless capacity, and then ultimately you'll end up finding yourself being taken to hell. So a really good example of this is during the story Thanos Wins, when basically Thanos showed up on Earth and started killing all the superheroes, that Punisher made a deal with Mephisto to gain the power necessary to kill Thanos. And in doing so, Mephisto made Punisher the Ghost Rider. The funny thing is that Punisher couldn't leave the Earth, so Thanos was already gone. So he had the power to kill Thanos, but he couldn't use it. And then when the time came when he would ultimately be destroyed, his soul would be taken by Mephisto. That's kind of how those deals work, right? It's not really a fair deal because he is kind of a god of tricks and lies, right? He's a god of deceit. But in the middle of all this, because of what had happened, specifically with the destruction of Las Vegas, that seemingly in the aftermath of that, when it was destroyed by Hydra, basically everybody who was there at the time, including the city, were just whisked away to the realm of Mephisto, right? Because Las Vegas is a city of sin. And so during that time, they would literally just torment people's souls. They would torture them, all kinds of stuff. It was a field day for Mephisto. But when Doctor Strange came along and then basically resurrected the entirety of Las Vegas and all the people in it, he essentially took all those people away from Mephisto. And so that's why Mephisto has erected a hotel here in Las Vegas to basically get those people back. But the other part of this, and this is what's kind of interesting here, is that as he's in this place, he's like, I mean, you know, I guess I could kind of get used to it, right? He's like, I mean, the people here in this city, they are all really sinners, right? Like you got prostitutes, you got John Does, you got mobsters, you got people who owe money to the mob, you got people who are breaking and entering, you've got people who are just doing all kinds of stuff. And so what Mephisto realizes is that instead of simply just striking deals with people intermittently across the earth while operating in his realm, or at least his section of hell, that instead he could operate in the city of Las Vegas. And because people go to Las Vegas to do things, engage in, you know, debauchery and things like that they simply just can't necessarily do in their normal lives, Las Vegas is basically the best place to find terrible people in order to steal their souls. That's literally the goal of Mephisto. And so that's why you start seeing these things happening, that he actually invites Doctor Strange into like this vault that he has. And then you kind of switch over to a moment where you have a John Doe with a prostitute, and then literally he's just like, is it just me or is it getting ridiculously hot in here? And the guy starts melting, right? At the same time, those people who were committing like breaking and entering, they're basically torched, right? The mobsters are basically torched. And then when Stephen Strange starts to look at the actual money that's being presented to him by Mephisto, instead of it having the face of like dead presidents, it's got the face of people's souls in there. That what Mephisto's doing is that as these people are basically destroyed, as he takes their souls, he puts their souls into money and then puts the money into a vault. It's pretty crazy, but kind of cool. And the funny thing is, like, with Mephisto being what he is, I mean, this is one thing to understand. It's a field day for this guy. And the funny thing is that it really is all just subjective based on essentially how Mephisto feels. So for example, like people like John Doe's, like this guy who's cheating on his wife, things like that, you know, basically sleeping with a prostitute, that's kind of an unforgivable thing, right? That's something that you can't necessarily let go. There's a guy who refuses to pay a parking meter, and Mephisto's like, done, right? Like that guy's soul belongs to me because technically he's a liar, right? I mean, it's one of those funny things about society, right? Like on a societal level, we've all just kind of silently agreed there are some lies that it's okay to tell, right? Like it's okay to lie sometimes as long as your lies don't go above like a certain threshold, right? You know, at that point, then it's considered to be an unforgivable thing. With Mephisto, it's not that way, right? A lie is a lie is a lie, right? So if you're a liar, your soul belongs to him. And that's just it, right? That's all there is to it. It's pretty interesting, right? Absolute evil versus absolute good. And he's just kind of like, I mean, like look at this, Stephen Strange, like look at this field day that I'm having here, right? These people who are engaging in like fixed boxing fights, right? All kinds of stuff. All these people who are all sinners out here. I'm surprised I never came here before, right? This place is just it's just the nature of things, right? You as a human race, you guys are just bad people. And it's been that way since basically like the apple in the Garden of Eden, right? It's just always been that way. It is in the nature of you as human beings to just be terrible things, right? To do terrible things. So like, you know, I want to expand out. We'll start in Vegas, right? We'll start out in Las Vegas. You know, we'll build a little bit of a thing here. And then as time progresses, right, we're going to be worldwide, baby. Hotel Inferno, Mephisto, we going worldwide, son. It's one of those funny things. And so ultimately a deal is struck. Right now, as you guys know, anybody who knows anything about Mephisto knows this guy's all about deals. He's all about bargains, right? You never get a fair bargain when you make a bargain with Mephisto. So that's why if you go into it, you have to be able to have some way to get the upper hand. You basically have to outsmart him, right? That's really what you have to do. So Doctor Strange, one of the things to know is him making this deal with Mephisto, he's got some kind of an ace up his sleeve. But what he says here is that the people in this world are not as bad as you make them out to be. And ultimately, like, Mephisto's like, are you serious? Like, you really think that's the case, right? You know, and Doctor Strange says, like, they may have made mistakes, but they always come through in the end. And so Mephisto's like, okay, well, if you're so confident about that, perhaps you'd like to make a friendly wager. And Doctor Strange is kind of like, dude, really? This is what you really want to do? And Mephisto's like, I know, man. I'm predictable, if not nothing else. But if you really believe in these people, if you really believe that humanity is not as terrible as I see them as being, then let's make a deal, right? Let's make a bargain. So if you win, then it's back to my realm, right? I go back to the realm of hell, and that vault gets emptied. All those people get their souls back, all that kind of stuff. Now, here's an important thing to understand, right? The statement, that vault gets emptied. That's where Mephisto trips you up, because in the end, this whole thing could easily end in such a way where Mephisto's kind of like, I said I would empty the vault. I didn't say I would give them their souls back. So it's like their souls go with me, right? That's the kind of thing Mephisto would do, right? But it's kind of like, you know, like I'll go back to my realm. The vault will be emptied. Everything will be cool. But if I win, I get your soul, Stephen Strange. And let's be honest, me in possession of the soul of a Sorcerer Supreme would give me all kinds of bragging rights among the Hell Lords, right? And so ultimately, Stephen Strange is like, okay, then we'll strike a deal. And that's when Mephisto's like, okay, then let's test these people. Let's test the superhero friends that you know. Jane Foster, because Jane Foster was Thor at this point in time, right? Sam Wilson, Falcon, Carol Danvers, Black Panther. Let's test these guys. Let's see if they're really as good as you make them out to be, or are they really as violent as I think they are? If I present them with some kind of an opportunity where they can give themselves to me, will they do it, or will they fight against me? And so ultimately he ends up using his power and effectively turns the Avengers into Ghost Riders, right? Turns them to like these Ghost Rider type beings. And then following that, because Stephen Strange basically has to find some method of performing or creating an army on his own, he can't readily do it, because at this point now, they've got to be hands off to a degree, right? They can't necessarily intervene. They can, but they can't. You guys will see what I'm talking about as the story goes on. But ultimately, you end up having basically Wong, right? You kind of switch back to Wong, who of course gets a knock at the door, and it turns out to be Bats. Bats is cool. All right, here's the thing about Bats, right? Quick little explanation about Bats. Bats was a basset hound that was adopted by Stephen Strange, and then when Loki was Sorcerer Supreme, he basically killed him by accident, and so Doctor Strange was just like, get out of here, right? When he got his powers back, he just never wanted to see him again. Loki tried to find a way to like fix it, but I mean, literally, like, Loki killed Doctor Strange's dog, right? It was a dick thing to do. And so Bats ended up coming back as like a ghost basset hound. There was also a point where Doctor Strange cast a spell so that instead of hearing barks, you could actually hear what he was saying, which is cool. Bats is awesome. I absolutely love Bats. And in fact, I remember getting on Twitter when Bats died, and I yelled at Donnie Cates. I was like, really, man? You killed Bats? What's your problem? I was so pissed. But then Bats came back as a ghost, so it makes everything okay. But the thing about this is that basically Bats tells Wong, like, hey man, there's something going on in Vegas. Like, you need to go look and see what's going on there. Of course, Wong peers into their cauldron, you know, the whole thing where it gives them visions and all that kind of stuff, and realizes what's going on between Doctor Strange and Mephisto. And so because of this, he realizes Doctor Strange cannot win this on his own. And if Wong were to go running off to Las Vegas to fight Mephisto, he would be crushed like that, right? I mean, it would happen with a quickness. Wong does not have the power to face off against a demonic entity on the level of Mephisto. Very few people do, right? Mephisto is just that powerful. And so in light of that, Rob Core, Wong does the only thing he can do. He says, we will call together a group of people who have faced the force of Mephisto before. We will call these people together. They will be the Hunter, Blade, the Knight, Moon Knight, the Slayer, Elsa Bloodstone, who no one cares about, the Order, right? Brother Voodoo, the Man-Thing, right? The Fist, and to lead the way, to lead this group, the Ghost Rider. In effect, Wong calls together the Midnight Suns. And man, dude, the Midnight Suns. Let me tell you something about the Midnight Suns. Sun. Dude, I love the Midnight Suns, man. The Midnight Suns are like just one of the coolest groups ever, right? But literally, let me tell you something, man. Like, but dude, when the Midnight Suns show up on the scene, all hell starts breaking loose. Especially Blade, man. Let me tell you something. Blade takes no prisoners, right? This guy does not give damn. Like, he just shows up and he's like, everybody's gonna die, right? It's crazy when Blade shows up. Anyway, with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. We will do part 2 next week. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.